Now, I very often hear this question. Why is parkour not in the Olympics? You know, with like the recent adoption of skateboarding in Tokyo 2021, proving to be super popular.
We're going to see the flip 5. Yes, we are. There it is.
Where's parkour? Well, you see, it's not quite that simple.
Massive federation that represents a completely different sport wants to control parkour.
They don't care about the community. They don't care about that.
No one does gymnastics anymore. Who wants to do gymnastics?
It feels like they're just trying to weasel in, take control of a sport.
Move magazine will stand with the community in its fight against FIG.
Don't roll over yet. It's not over. We can fight this.
They are far too powerful to just be trusted.
This video is no doubt the most requested video you guys asked me to make. And to be honest, I've kind of shied away from making it because it's such a big story that really needs to be handled with care. So here we are today. Let's get our hands dirty. So to give you a bit of background, parkour is a young sport. It's about 20 or 30 years old. And because it's a young sport, there hasn't been an internationally recognized governing body for it. It just hasn't had the time to get there. Effectively, parkour is like a sofa sitting on someone's drive with the words free on it. So if you were a crafty enough person and had enough power, this would be quite a good opportunity for you. Before we go any further with this video, I want to give a massive thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Raid Shadow Legends is a free game that you can just download and dive into. You can massively help me out by using my link to download Raid yourself, either to your PC or your mobile phone. Honestly, what I enjoy the most about Raid Shadow Legends is the gameplay. It's a turn-based combat where you have to kind of calculate and premeditate your attacks against your enemy. Raid Shadow Legends is a whole world filled of amazing looking characters. There's a ton of lore and backstory and amazing art that goes into this game. For example, there is a faction called the Bannerlords. The Bannerlords are one of the very few completely human factions in Teleria. Their armor and weapons are designed after like feudal knights in medieval Europe. And rumor has it that their once good king Tabor has come under the influence of a growing shadow. Is it true? Well, that's your job to find out in the first chapter of the campaign. Raid Shadow Legends is always having new updates. And this month they've released a ton of amazing new clan features and improvement. This month's also got new champions to collect from fragments in the Doom Tower. So if you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you need to do is click the link in the description or scan my QR code and you'll get the epic hero Chinoru, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard. So you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get into the game. All of this treasure will be waiting for you just here in your inbox. Once you're in, you can find me in game under the username Jimmy the G. And if you're quick, you can join my clan. And it's that easy. Just click the link in the description and I'll see you in game. Anyway, back to the video. On the 24th of February 2017, the Fédération Internationale de Gymnastic, I'm just going to call them FIG. FIG published a press release developing a new discipline. Following a presentation and research into parcours des obstacles, just obstacle courses, and parkour, the executive committee agreed the development of a FIG-related discipline. And a day later, an article came out confirming that FIG were interested in parkour. But the weird part about this announcement that FIG had made was where they said the following. FIG deeply respects the development of parkour as a non-competitive training methodology, and with a particular philosophy emphasizing efficiency, usefulness, and personal development. So to me, this signaled that they were aware that what they were about to do might be taken poorly, because they basically said, we want to do parkour competitions, but we deeply respect that the sport is a non-competitive sport, which is sort of like going up to someone, slapping them in the face and saying, I do deeply respect that you didn't want to be slapped in the face, but here we are. Now look, as far as parkour being non-competitive, that kind of isn't true now. Opinions have definitely changed, but around 2017, parkour competitions weren't that common. But regardless, FIG had decided it was now interested in parkour, whilst being very aware that this could be controversial. And what's weird is that this announcement seemingly came out of little to no communication with the parkour community. You see, parkour at the time did have national governing bodies. There would have been plenty of people that FIG could have approached to speak to, but it appeared, at least from the communication FIG had given, that they didn't really reach out to the parkour world. And as you might expect, this didn't go well with the parkour community. On the 31st of March 2017, Parkour UK issued an open letter to FIG. Parkour UK feel it is both necessary and expedient to provide some much needed clarification on parkour/free running, such that our sport is neither misappropriated and or encroached upon by FIG internationally. Parkour UK has experienced similar encroachment and misappropriation via the development of freestyle gymnastics, also known as 3G.
3G is very similar to gymnastics in the sense that some of the skills and tricks they do is very similar, like on the floor. You know, it's really good because it's a different way, and it's really unique.
There was a really lame attempt in 2013 of gymnastics making a sport called freestyle gymnastics, which amazingly looked exactly like parkour and free running, but it wasn't because it was called 3G. So it couldn't have been parkour. In fact, I'm pretty sure parkour ripped off 3G. The letter continues to say, free running / parkour is not gymnastics, nor are tracers and free runners gymnasts. We are our own sovereign sport with independently recognized distinct uniqueness and cultural status. We are parkour and free running. We are tracers and free runners. Except no one uses the word tracer anymore. Things were heating up. It was officially a beef. These established national governing bodies for parkour were annoyed. They had worked for years to get recognised as the governing body, working with local councils, making parkour facilities, working on certifications for parkour coaches. They had done a lot of work. And then FIG saw parkour and thought, yeah, I'm gonna have a slice of that. And we're literally attempting to claim it as its own sport, which I must say is weird, firstly, as gymnastics has never loved parkour. I would personally argue that gymnastics didn't really even respect parkour that much. Now, I'm not talking about every individual gymnast, but the general feeling there has always been a bit of a tension between gymnastics and parkour, often because free runners would come into the gymnastic halls to learn flips, and this would lead to endless arguments. I remember personally having a heated argument over double kongs. I wanted to do a double kong, and this coach would not let me. He was threatening to kick me out of the gym because I was doing a double kong. And in my personal experience, there's always kind of been this sort of snobbishness over technique. If a gymnast sees a free runner doing a back full slightly off axis, they'll probably roll their eyes and be like, But anyway, it's pretty anecdotal, but long story short, it just seemed pretty rich that gymnastics turned around and said, join the family. From this point, more and more open letters came from national governing bodies of parkour from around the world. One came from the French Parkour Federation, where they basically said, Les gymnastiques, non. And up until this point, parkour bodies had been firm but polite. That was until Parkour UK went, F this, and just sent for FIG. Parkour UK claimed that the presentation to the executive committee was given by someone who did not have the authority to do so. It is clear that whoever this individual or organisation was, they do not have the expertise, legitimacy, and or authority to represent our sport either nationally or internationally. Additionally, it is also unclear as to what the motivation behind FIG's intentions relating to the development of a related FIG discipline based on parkour or free running, as this is not innovation but is clear encroachment and misappropriation. It's a madness. The first shots have been fired. Parkour had gone to war with gymnastics. The letter continues and their man went full Jack Bauer on them. They said they're going to take this issue to the Court of Arbitrations for Sport if a memorandum of understanding was not established within 60 days of a formal meeting between Parkour UK and FIG. I wish they said that you've got 24 hours to reply, but it was still an alpha play.
24 hours to reply.
But you see, the thing is, not all the parkour governing bodies and businesses agreed with Parkour UK. Most did, but not all of them. An American parkour company called Apex announced that they would work with FIG at an up-and-coming event called FISE, which would be in Montpellier, France in 2017. And this created a couple of rifts in the parkour community, especially amongst these sort of businesses and governing bodies. You see, in the early days of this drama, people were trying to figure out what side of the argument they were on. To go with FIG, the international governing body of gymnastics, meant big budgets and a scope to do really big and cool things. The decision was between that or to stay as parkour and stand on its own 2 feet. But anyway, amongst this whole situation, there was one thing that everyone was waiting to hear. And it would only be a matter of time before we would hear it. On the 5th of May, 2017, FIG had proposed parkour to be included in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Oh, how little did we know. Now you may be thinking, Jimmy, this is great news. The Olympics is broadcast all around the world to so many people. This is great publicity for parkour, and I do agree. The Olympics could be a great thing for parkour, but it's not that simple. You see, to get a better understanding, we need to look at other sports that have experienced this similar hostile takeover. Because parkour is not the first one. This has happened time and time again. We're going to focus on one in particular because there are literally so many examples to choose from. Damien Puddle of Parkour Earth did a whole presentation on exactly this. I'll link that below so you can check it out. So one story that really stands out is snowboarding. In the 80s, snowboarding was really popular. There was loads of competitions popping up and skiing caught wind of it.
A decade in the United States, and now it's becoming the trendy thing to do on our local ski slopes.
They're dangerous because if one of these skateboards or ski boards, whatever they're called, hit a person, they'd break their leg because they're just like a missile.
And very quickly after this rise in popularity, the International Skiing Federation, for completely unrelated reasons, just happened to be interested in snowboarding. So the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, sanctioned skiing as the governing body of snowboarding. What does this mean, you might wonder? Well, effectively, it means that the International Skiing Federation could dictate rules of competitions, set standards for the sport, and their competitions would become the route to the Olympics. This led to a battle between the Snowboarding Federation and the Skiing Federation. This battle ended up bankrupting the Snowboarding Federation. And on top of this, as you would expect, skiing didn't know anything about snowboarding. It's a different sport. Obviously, it has snow, so they knew that it was cold, but they didn't know how to run competitions or anything about the culture of snowboarding. And this led to the Sochi Winter Olympics.
A woman from Finland fell hard and hit her head, and a Norwegian broke his collarbone. Many snowboarders say the course is too dangerous.
Where, effectively, skiers had to make ramps for snowboarding, who had no idea what they were doing. This led to the iconic Sean Wood refusing to take part in the competition because he deemed the ramps too dangerous. And there are loads more examples of this same thing. Windsurfing, BMX, skateboarding. All of these sports have the same problem. They don't govern their own sport because the monolithic IOC sanctions someone else to govern it. They would just choose another sport that has some commonality between it and give it to them because they're more established. This complete monopoly that IOC has leads to them imposing governing bodies over sports that really have no business doing so. And what this means is that those governing bodies get to dictate how the massive chunks of funding that the Olympics give them is spent. And one example of how this can lead to some absolute financial shafting is BMX. BMX got swept under the International Cycling Union. In New Zealand, the IOC granted the Cycling Union $6.2 million. $1.6 million of those dollars got spent on lane cycling, whilst $291,000 got spent on BMX. And if you think that's bad, mountain biking only got $14,000, so, you know, count your blessings. And it's because these sports are young and unorganized that they're basically easy pickings for these large international bodies. But anyway, back to our actual story. On May 4th, 2017, another article came out that shocked the parkour world. FIG had announced that they are working very closely with the founders of parkour. When freerunners read the sentence, "We are working with the founders of parkour," a moment of confusion swept across the world of parkour. Which founder could it be? Well, if we take a look at this photo, we will find the answer. Enhance. Enhance. There was a definite feeling of betrayal. The founder of parkour was selling parkour out to Gymnastics. this was the final straw for most of the parkour community. A number of comments criticised the move, and people started using the hashtag #WeAreNotGymnastics. This unnerving discovery sparked a massive pushback against Fig from the parkour community. By late 2017, most of the parkour world was well aware of what Fig was trying to do, and were being whipped up into a bit of a frenzy over the whole issue. Apex announced they would no longer work with Fig. Other co-founders of the sport that were there with David Bell in the beginning also issued open letters against Fig. This led to David Bell and Charles Pierre having to issue a statement explaining that they hadn't made any formal agreements with the Fig. Open letters were flying in like they were acceptance letters to Hogwarts.
That's it! We're going away!
But despite this, Fig went on to announce their first event at FISE. A controversial event that saw famous, well-known freerunners compete at, much to the distaste of some of the parkour community. And to be honest, it was a pretty tough position for aspiring professional freerunners to be in. Parkour competitions are pretty rare and they don't really pay very well. In fact, you're probably only going to make money if you win. But there was Fig paying well and even paying people just to compete. However, some professional athletes completely boycotted the Fig event. Joe Henderson, Alex Schauer, Louis Sakim all signed an open letter refusing to compete. People were really pushing back. MoveMag launched a Fight the Fig campaign. Sebastian Foucan, one of the other main founders of Parkour, announced that he was going to resign as president of Parkour UK, basically expressing he wanted to distance himself from the political side of Parkour. There was petitions, there were hashtags, there was everything short of burning down gymnastic centres. But then, a very well-known freerunner by the name of Jason Paul uploaded two rather controversial videos. You see, to give some background about these videos, this whole debate started to become a bit of a battle of misinformation. There would be one claim about why Fig is the worst and it's going to destroy parkour, and then a counter argument would come out saying that you're completely exaggerating a piece of information you've heard. There grew this kind of toxic environment around this conversation. So Jason pushed back. He wanted to open the conversation as to maybe there's some pros to work with Fig.
And it really got me to the position where I felt, Fig, we have to take Fig down, they're doing terrible things, they're gonna steal our sport and everything we worked for so hard. And in fact, we had a whole video prepared telling you guys to do that. Until I had a phone call just an hour ago, which gave me a completely different side of the different perspective on the whole story.
He talked about how parkour and gymnastics has been intertwined for a long time. Lots of parkour people go to gymnastic centres. Parkour classes are hosted in gymnastic centres, which have led to parkour companies being built on the back of gymnastics. Like literally, like parkour centres and gymnastics combined. He also talked about how this big influx of cash could be really positive for parkour, athletes, business owners, etc. And it seemed like he was entertaining the idea that working with Fig might not be the worst thing on earth. And I appreciate Jason making this video. It was brave of him to put out an opinion that was going to be controversial. But for all the good things that Fig might offer parkour, the money, the publicity, etc., was largely overshadowed by their lack of transparency and inability to communicate with the world of parkour. I certainly agree, there could be a situation with Fig that could be great if it was handled well, but it didn't seem like Fig were really that interested in working towards that. But as I say, this whole thing just became toxic. Even merely to entertain the idea of working with Fig would lead to people thinking you're a sellout, which I believe ironically made the conversation between Fig and parkour less likely to happen. And on Fig's side, they had a complete failure of communication. They wouldn't explain openly and clearly what their intentions for parkour was. How would they intend to not spoil parkour? How were they going to work with the grassroots? Fig communicated none of it. And at the same time, freerunners wore shirts that said, Fig. To me, this is a small snapshot into the many issues of internet activism, as well the many issues with these monopolised sporting governing bodies. But we'll talk more about that later. In an effort to try and increase communication with Fig and parkour, they launched a forum, which no longer works. And then shortly after that, David Bell and Charles Perrier said that they are working with Fig and that Fig is great, and that they were giving them freedom to do what they wanted. But the thing is, even working with David Bell and Charles Perrier, they don't exactly have a history of being involved in the culture of parkour. As opposed to like Sebastian Foucan, who posts to Instagram constantly. He does his own parkour coaching. If you want to message him, he's pretty easy to reach. Whereas David, on the other hand, was this aloof, mysterious being, this absent father of parkour. But at this point, something crazy started to happen. This story of Fig taking over parkour hit mainstream news. News outlets like BBC, Vice, ABC, The Guardian, The Economist were putting out articles basically echoing the plight of parkour and its battle against Fig. This situation was becoming a very big deal. At this point, Parkour Earth was launched as a global governing body to effectively be in the position to oppose Fig. And just as a tangent, there was this weird random beef that popped off between Parkour Earth and IPF. I'm not quite sure what was said because the post got deleted, but from what I heard, IPF said that Parkour Earth were trying to collude with Fig, and they very quickly had to apologize for making that claim. Despite all of this madness and growing opposition from not only parkour but mainstream news, Fig remained steadfast in their determined view to take over parkour. They went ahead with their events in Chengdu, and despite not getting parkour in Tokyo 2020, they had made it very clear about their ambition to get parkour in the Paris 2024 Olympics. They continued on, they made a Parkour World Cup, and they actually went on to sign a Memorandum of Understanding, I've kind of forgot how you're meant to say it, MOU, between Fig and the IPF. So you know, it was a step in the right direction. They even hosted a parkour event at the Youth Olympics in 2018. It was all looking pretty good for Fig, but then disaster struck. For Fig. The 21st of June, 2018. A statement was released saying that David Bell had resigned from his position as president of the Parkour Commission. And then very shortly after, half of the Parkour Commission left as well, basically stating that Fig weren't representing the parkour community. But undeterred, Fig just tried to sweep it under the rug. They put out a statement basically saying that these people that left just wanted to get on with parkour in their own country, which turned out to be a complete lie, as Ahmed Al-Brahi shared on Facebook. He said the reason they all left was basically because Fig were trying to rename parkour to Gymnastics Parkour. But in the parkour world, anxiety grew, as word spread that on the 82nd Fig conference, Fig would finally decide once and for all whether to recognise parkour as a gymnastics discipline. As you'd expect, more open letters came in, but this time they weren't just aimed towards Fig, they were aimed at the national gymnastics governing bodies, so like the gymnastics body in the UK, pleading with them to abstain or not vote for parkour to become a gymnastics discipline. You would think after all this backlash, endless athletes and parkour governing bodies expressing they don't want to be part of gymnastics, surely they would listen and vote no. On Wednesday the 5th of December 2018, we found out the result of this vote. The Fig Congress votes for official inclusion of parkour events. That was it. The fight was over. There was pretty much nothing at this point the parkour world could do. Parkour is now a gymnastics discipline. I hate saying that. The Federation of Gymnastics owns parkour for no other reason than they said they do. You know, I'd actually never made my mind up about Fig before making this video. I always like to try and see things from both sides, and I see what Fig can bring to parkour. But after my deep dive and research into this topic, I just can't say I side with Fig at all. And to be honest, the deeper I've researched into the concept of governing bodies in sport and the IOC, the more I see how deeply riddled they are with corruption. They are effectively self-appointed monopolies over entire industries, and they're not like held under the scrutiny of the free market, nor a real democratic process, as they basically select their own representatives. It's not like me as a free runner votes for it. And on top of this, the IOC has a big history of vote bribing, and there are quite literally monarchs that are in the IOC. And it just feels so wrong to me that an individual who runs a parkour gym, they put their money and their life into this gym because they care and love parkour. It seems so wrong to me that they can be under some kind of jurisdiction from this self-appointed body. And it's so weird because take any other industry, I don't know, corner shops. It's not like there's a global body of corner shop owners that dictate how money is spent and distributed. No, the corner shop makes the money and spends it how they want to. So why is it different with sport? Maybe there is a good reason, and I'd love to know. If you have more information on this, please comment it below because I don't understand. But it just doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't feel right. So you may be left wondering, what is the future for parkour? Well, I think it's likely that parkour will be in the LA 2028 Olympics under gymnastics. And if it is, that will be good for parkour. That is a massive thing. It could be great for the entire sport, the economy, and just more people get to experience parkour. And to be honest, I can only hope that FIG just get over themselves and bring on board all of these governing bodies within the world of parkour, like work with Parkour Earth and the IPF, etc., so they can ensure that parkour is represented properly. If a good relationship is struck, it could be a great thing for parkour. So we can only hope that that happens. If it doesn't, then who knows. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I've just released a whole new line of clothing called Vision. It would mean the world if you could go and check that out and pick something up. It massively helps me and this channel. Or you can use the sponsored link below or support me on Patreon. Peace.